My biggest advice is go with your gut, but have the tracking and the reporting in place to understand the data after the fact. So it's like the scientific method. We want to try to control as much as we can, except for that one variable. Creating a really nice process in place with good, strong reporting and data behind it is going to be absolutely crucial, especially in the beginning, to understand, hey, are we going in the right direction or should we shift gears here and maybe move in a different direction?
Joe Sclafani is VP of Sales at Lendware, a mortgage CRM platform that combines marketing automation, AI tools, and APIs for mortgage businesses and enterprises. Today, we're talking about what breaks when you sell vertical SaaS into a regulated industry, how to build a sales process when your buyers range from individual mortgage shops to enterprises, and how to balance hiring from domain expertise versus sales skills when the product requires both. This is Are You Getting More? Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Lisa, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Joe, you are VP of Sales at Lendware now, working in mortgage tech. What drew you to the mortgage CRM space specifically? And what did you need to learn about the industry that you couldn't bring from previous sales leadership roles?
I've been a sales leader now for 12 years, primarily in restaurant tech. I'm absolutely having a blast with this new industry and mortgage brokers. The people in it are absolutely fantastic. And what I love most about it is they have big personalities and they're all sellers at heart, whether it's the individual loan officer or even at the corporate level. They get it. Hungry for success. They're looking for the best ways to build their business and help their direct reports become top producers. Funny enough, I do have a real estate background. I got my real estate license when I was 18 years old. I'm still licensed today in both New York and New Jersey. And a former colleague who's now the CEO of Lendware, Josh Glantz. Josh and I worked together 10 years ago in a restaurant tech company. And he reached out to me. He just took over as CEO of Lendware. And he said, I need your skill set to go to market and get us there really, really quickly. So at first I was a little bit hesitant because it is a new industry, but really excited for the opportunity. And I've learned really, really quickly that regardless of the industry, if you have some really good sales foundations and go-to-market strategies in your toolbox, you could be successful.
It sounds like that real estate background really helped.
It definitely is helpful, yes. But I will say that the real estate agent and the mortgage broker, although they're in the same industry and they work together, very, very different process on both sides of the table.
Lendware combines CRM, marketing automation, AI tools, and APIs into one platform. When you're selling to mortgage businesses, what's the pattern you see in how they think about buying point solutions versus an integrated platform? And how does that shape your sales approach?
I think mortgage businesses are constantly weighing integrated platforms versus point of sale solutions. And the decision usually comes down to scale, maturity, and operational pain. So early on, point solutions, they win because they're faster to deploy. They solve a very specific problem. But as organizations grow, those tools start to create data silos, manual work, and the biggest thing, compliance risks. So that's where integrated platforms become more attractive, not because they have more features, but because they're centralized data, standardized workflows, and they make governance easier in a regulated environment. So one of the exact reasons that I actually joined Lendware is after doing my due diligence and just research on not only the company, but the solution itself, it became very apparent to me quickly that this industry specifically has a big problem to solve for, which is breaking down these data silos. And it's always been a motto of mine that deals are made when problems are solved. And we're definitely solving some problems here at Lendware.
Mortgage is a heavily regulated industry with established workflows. When you're selling software that changes how loan officers and mortgage teams operate, what's the most common objection you face that has nothing to do with the product feature?
The biggest objection that we get is kind of through the prospecting process where it's an interesting industry because it's somewhat of a matrix. You have loan officers that are essentially independent contractors that are working underneath the corporate umbrella. So in some companies, they have full reign to kind of choose their tech stack, what they want to use, and kind of could do whatever they want to do. But for other companies, the corporate level kind of dictates, this is the tech stack that you're using. This is what you can plug in. This is what you can plug in. So really that discovery process is super, super important. And that qualification process is really, really essential as early into the sales process as possible and kind of understanding how does that company operate.
You're selling to both individual mortgage businesses and enterprises. What breaks in your sales process when you try to use the same playbook for both? And how have you structured your team or approach to handle that split?
I actually broke it up into two different go-to-market strategies. They're somewhat following the same playbook, but the personas that they're going after are just different. So I have my SDRs that are hyper transactional, cold call heavy, trying to get in touch with folks, and they're going more of a bottom up approach. While my more experienced AEs, they're going more top down. So just figuring out within those companies, who is the ultimate decision maker. And when you're in this sort of industry where it's very hard to dial in from a spreadsheet per se, who can make decisions, it's working out really nicely because as we have this hyper transactional motion going bottom up, we're also learning a lot about the companies, which is making the AE's job that much easier to understand who they should be going after.
A lot of B2B SaaS companies are adding AI features right now, well, because they can. Lendware has AI tools as part of their platform as well. How do you approach selling AI capabilities to mortgage professionals who might be skeptical or unclear on the value? I imagine many of them are still very old school. What's worked for you so far and what hasn't?
I love this question because another reason that I joined Lendware was specifically around a product called Lendware Predict, which is an AI propensity model tool that I think is just going to revolutionize the mortgage industry and specifically how mortgage brokers, loan officers, and corporations go to market and connect with their customers. So what's really interesting is you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It is somewhat of an archaic industry. For some folks, they're not necessarily the most tech savvy, but in my experience so far, most people understand that they need some sort of AI tool to make them productive and efficient. They just don't necessarily know what that tool is yet. And then on the flip side, what I also have encountered so far is, especially in this industry, they're afraid that maybe AI is going to replace them. And it's just not the case. The AI is used to empower them. And for the folks that really understand that it's a tool not to replace them, but to make them stronger, better, and more efficient, those are the folks that are really going to win by leveraging AI.
Do you find like you have to really convince them that AI is not Satan, or do you have a pitch prepared for that?
AI is everywhere right now, and it's a buzzword, and people are hearing it. And another thing that's really interesting about this industry is they're all on LinkedIn, all very active on LinkedIn. So they're seeing in their feeds everything about AI and how that's changing the landscape, and they're interested in it. So it's not so much an objection as it's more of, hey, I want to learn more. I just don't know enough yet. Can you teach me?
Gotcha. So it sounds like most people are pretty open-minded.
They're very open-minded. I mean, we for sure get in front of some folks that are saying, I've been doing business for 20 years with a Excel sheet or a pen and paper. I don't need any of this. I've built my relationships, this and that. And then kind of what I say to that and what I've coached my team to say is, look, nobody wants to change how you've built your business. You've built your business very well over the last 20 years. But with that being said, if you're not at the tip of the spear, you're going to get left behind. So we're just trying to show you how is this going to make your life better and how is it going to make it easier to connect with your customers, your clients, and close more deals.
You mentioned that you're relatively new at Lendware. What's one part of your sales process or system that you've had to rebuild or significantly change since you joined them? And what forced that change?
I think our go-to-market strategy and kind of why I was approached to kind of take over this role is really to lead this bottom-up motion while simultaneously creating this top-down motion and really getting specific on the type of businesses that we're looking for. And this is a suggestion or advice that I'd give anybody starting off in a true 0 to 1 motion, because I've done that multiple times now as well, is founders, CEOs, startups in general always like to go after the big players, right? They want to go after the big companies, the big enterprises, which for sure at Lendware we are interacting with and working with and trying to partner with, but you can't put all your eggs in one basket, especially in the beginning. Make sure you walk before you run and make sure that your product, your people, and your process is in place before going after the big logos out there. So one of the biggest things that I'm working on right now is really defining that sales process and that qualification process to make sure that we're not only getting a lot of new customers, but we're getting the right customers, the customers that we're going to be able to provide the most value to.
That's really great advice. Since you are new at Lendware, you haven't been there for very long, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this next question, but I'll run it past you anyway. Usually, when you spend some time in a company, you notice that the better you get at closing deals, the better you see where the friction still exists in the broader customer journey. Now that you've spent some time at Lendware, perhaps you're already able to see if there is maybe one constraint that would meaningfully accelerate growth if it was removed.
One thing that can really expedite growth would be to understand what is their current tech stack. And with their current tech stack, LOS integration is by far one of the most important things that we need to understand early and quickly in the sales process. Because at the end of the day, breaking down those data silos, it's about integration. It's about creating a very fluid workflow and having a tech stack that talks to each other. So although we can work with folks that maybe don't use an LOS that we're currently partnered with today, it's not necessarily recommended because you're going to have to work in multiple environments to kind of get their customers across the line.
Looking back at everything you've learned building sales in B2B SaaS, what's the one golden principle that's guided your decisions when things get complicated or unclear?
I usually have a very good gut instinct on things, but my biggest advice is go with your gut, but have the tracking and the reporting in place to understand the data after the fact. So it's like the scientific method. We want to try to control as much as we can, except for that one variable. Creating a really nice process in place with good, strong reporting and data behind it is going to be absolutely crucial, especially in the beginning, to understand, hey, are we going in the right direction or should we shift gears here and maybe move in a different direction?
Beautiful. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a pleasure.
If any of you want to connect with Joe and see what they're doing over at Lendware, the link is in the description. This has been Are You Getting More? And we'll see you next time.